We believe that men can be powerful forces for good in their communities. The TruCoach Podcast exists to equip coaches with the tools they need to prepare boys and young men for life.
We're two dads and we have sons. Ben has 3 sons and I have 1 son. And we're trying to understand how to raise our sons in a way that they are comprehensive men when they grow up. And there's a lot involved in that. We also recognize that a lot of people have talked about how there's this, what's termed a crisis of masculinity. And so, there's terms like failure to launch, which means that kids, boys in their mid-20s, even 30s, mid-30s are not able to get out of their parents' house, find a good job, or contribute to society in any way. And there's a lot more to this crisis than that, but that's one of the things that we recognize. There seems to be a crisis of masculinity. There's not a lot of instruction for fathers about how to raise their sons. I mean, there's more and more and more because people are responding to this crisis. But we just asked ourselves, okay, we want to know how to, obviously, this is the most important job we're ever going to have, is being fathers. So how do we raise our sons? And you get thrown into being a father. It's like you don't, there's no, you could read all the books you want, and then you put a baby in front of you, and then they grow to be a toddler and then an adolescent. It's like every stage is different. So there's no instruction manual. So we're just embarking on this journey. How do we be good fathers to our sons? How do we raise them to be men who have character, who have integrity, and who contribute, to their families, serve their families, love their families, and grow up. And so that's kind of why we're here. That's why we're doing this podcast. So through our journey, our sons play sports. So Ben's kids play hockey, my kid plays basketball, and we both got volunteered to coach. And so through our coaching journey, we realized what a tool being a coach could be. Not a tool. That's not the word I'm looking for, but how meaningful a contribution that we could make in the lives of the boys that we coach, and how much of a privilege it is to just be able to do that. And so when you take that, okay, we're coaches, we're coaching these kids. So my son is 12, and so he's right at that adolescent stage. So some kids on his team are going through, that those puberty, the beginning onset of puberty, which is awkward and sort of funny from an outside perspective. But I'm like, man, what opportunity I have to influence these boys. So that's where TruCoach comes in. Yeah. So TruCoach is it's a tool that helps coaches understand this. It answers this big question, which is, what is required for boys to become men? What does it take for boys to become men? So that's a huge question. So cultures throughout history have used what are called rites of passage. So the Maasai tribe in Kenya, for example, I don't know that they've actually done this, but they might go out and take their 12, 13, 14-year-old boys, go and maybe hunt a predator, hunt a lion or something like that. The boys needed to know that, hey, this is going to be your job when you guys grow up. This is what you're going to be required to do. And it has to be hard. It has to be difficult. It has to be somewhat perilous. Boys, if you've ever been around boys, especially in a sports context, teenage boys or even adolescent boys, it's intense. The testosterone produces a lot of energy, a lot of physical intensity. And so there's actually a need for those rites of passage to have the fathers in the community surrounding them, making sure they're safe, but not safe enough that it's comfortable. They have to be uncomfortable. And so we're really looking at, how do we use sports as coaches? How do we use sports to introduce these rites of passage into the lives of young men that will then help them transform and continue to grow and learn these fundamental lessons that seem to be missing from our society? So that's kind of the overview of TruCoach. I don't know, Ben, if you have anything to add on that, and what your journey's been like coaching.
Yeah, well, I think when you go all the way back to when, your boy was like 6, and I think my oldest was 4 at the time, that's when we first started these conversations of like, man, how do we help these little kids that we have running around the house that just don't have any care in the world? Like, how do we help them become men? And they're going to grow up and move out of this home really, really fast. And so, I remember we had so many conversations around that idea, but never really stuck to anything. And, it was like a year and a half ago, around a year ago, just looking around and like, yes, there's so many people who understand the importance of a passage of rites, or sort of like a moment in time where now, son, now it is your time to become a man. And it sort of dawned on us as your kid was getting into basketball, mine are getting into hockey, that like, hey, this huge community of organized sports already exists. And these mentors, these coaches are already in place guiding these boys through the sport. Why don't we try to use that opportunity in that position as a coach to guide these boys through their own passage of rites? And that was pretty huge, because we are no longer trying to create this community and cultivate this environment where that can happen. It already exists. And there's so many coaches out there that truly care deeply about not just their own kids on the team, but every kid on the team. And just how intentional you need to be in order to carry these kids through it, because our culture, as it stands right now, it's sort of anti-culture in the West. And this brings an opportunity to like really bring some culture back. And each sport has their own specific cultures, but allowing coaches and giving coaches the right tools and start a community and have the right conversations. That's where TruCoach is, where we can equip people with everything they need to help guide their boys to become men. And I think another huge part of it is it's not some quick thing that's going to happen in a couple of months. It's not, okay, we're going to go out and we're going to hunt this predator and going to come back and you're going to be a man. Like, we're playing the long game. Like, the conversation and the way that you interact with these kids, it starts really young. And with your oldest, being 12, like stepping into puberty, these kids are confused about a lot of stuff and they need a ton of guidance. And like, that's when it begins, all walking them all the way till they're 18, 19, however old it needs to be. But like, that's when they're in organized sports, and that's when we have a huge opportunity to jump in. So that's really where I see TruCoach working really well.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I had this. So there's a pro basketball team that plays in the city I live in. So, I mean, these guys play in Europe half the year, and then they come to North America and play half the year here. And so the team that I coach, we were able to set up just a viewing of their practice. So these guys are all former NCAA Division I athletes, former basketball, playing Division I basketball. And so I was curious so the owner was there at the practice. And so I was like, I got to talk to this guy because I want to find out. So I asked the age of the players, and he says they're between ages 23 and 31. And so I was like, okay, so they should know something about life now. Like, I'm assuming that their experience at the college level, like at the Division I level, is not just, pure exploitation where they're being, they're athletes. You have people paying for tickets and, all the different, fan paraphernalia and everything. And the school's making money, making big money. I know things have changed now, but I'm like, do they know anything about, like, practically about life, right? They've been these high level athletes their whole childhood, right up and through their teen years and now into their 20s. They're playing professional basketball all over the world. And the owner said, they don't really know a whole lot about life. He said that he gets text messages from some of them. Like, he's very engaged. It's kind of like, it's a community owned team. So the owner's very engaged. The players have his phone number. He knows them well. They're on a first name basis. And he's like, I get text messages like, the gas in the car is empty. What do I do? Or, like he's got an apartment set up for some of them. Like the garbage is full. What do I do? My bank account's empty. Like, what do I do? My bank account's empty. So I think, and I think like, I know that these guys are kind of an anomaly. Some of these Division I, like there's very few people that athletic, but regardless, there's something missing. There's something that's being missed in translation, that we're not setting these young men up for success in life. And so I think that's kind of like an allegory to what our culture's doing at large. Maybe how to fill your car up with gas or take the garbage out, but it's like the soft skills. Like, do you know what it looks like for you to be responsible for your own life? So like, can you take care of yourself? Are you able to, own your life, own your decisions? And then are you able then, once you've done that, are you able then to care for another person? So that's when we get into, a young man who has a girlfriend or maybe a fiance, or they're going to get married. And then, okay, now I'm responsible. We have a degree of mutual individual responsibility, and then we have this collective responsibility for one another. So am I responsible enough to take care of this, this other person? And then it's the kids. And then once you get to the kids, it's like you kind of have to know how to be responsible for yourself on default, because you can't really think about it. Your own, you obviously have to take care of yourself, and you have to steward your own well-being. But when you have kids, it's like so much of that is just, it almost has to happen on autopilot, because so much of your time is consumed with just doing life, right? Making dinner and taking your kids to practice and making sure they did their homework and cleaning your house. And like, so the point is that I think, and you're seeing like the fertility rates dropping. So there's not as many families, not as many people are getting married. We're not having as many kids. So I think this is really like it's a spiritual problem. It's an emotional problem. It's a societal, cultural problem. And so TruCoach is dealing with it at the heart level. So how do we, if you watch, there's a guy named Jason Wilson who does a remarkable work in Detroit, Michigan with boys. I think this is like between the ages of 8 and 12. And so he's written a book called The Man the Moment Demands, and it's all about being a comprehensive man. So it's about things like your job as a man, your role as a man when you grow up and you have a family is to be a protector and a provider. Those are two things. But there's like there's all sorts of other things. He talks about how the emotional range of a woman is like a package of crayons, like pencil crayons, and it has like, all the colors of the rainbow, every primary color, and it has like every different shade, right? So there's like maybe 64 different pencil crayons. And then the emotional range of most men is like they might have like 2 or 3 colors.
3 primary. Yeah.
They have like, red, red and blue, or
only red,
which is anger, only anger. Yeah. Blue is whatever, sadness. I don't know. But so all that to say, like, there's a lot of men, they grow up and they're like, okay, I can do the protector piece, I can do the provider piece, but I don't know how to do any of the other stuff. I don't know how to be a nurturer. I don't know how to be like bare my heart, be honest and transparent with the people that I love the most. And so I forget where I was going with that. Do you remember where I was going with that? Because
well, I think just to add on to it, like, you have like men, boys, you typically have a smaller range of emotions, but when you're super young, like boys have a very wide color palette of emotion. And then as they get older and older, it seems that it becomes less colorful. And, my oldest, he just turned 11. So I haven't had an opportunity to coach any kids older than 11, but I've been heavily involved with kids from the ages 8 to 11. So just before they kind of hit that puberty. And I watched just like the emotions that go through them during the game. And I coach hockey, so it's like it's fast paced, and you go out and you rip for a minute and then you come back in. And all of these things happened in that minute that were an absolute battle out there. And every kid is different. Some kids are just there to basically just like look at their mom in the stands or their dad and just like wave, and they're having just the best time of their lives. And then you have other kids out there who they cannot control what happened in that minute, and then it throws their entire world upside down. And so as a coach, that's where I've had to take specific kids, and they often can be the most athletic on the team, who are the most like emotionally charged. I have to pull them aside and, you know, using the things that I've learned, and this is where TruCoach comes in. I'm like, okay, let's walk through these emotions. Everything you're feeling is good, but like, let's not get too red. Like, let's dial you back. And ultimately what my hope is, and this takes like time and time, shift after shift, game after game, to help them navigate these emotions they have. And all kids are different, but I'm hoping that within those moments, I can help them navigate this chaos of emotions that they're feeling, so that they can regain control and get back out on the ice to hit the next shift. And it's like, that's huge in life, because like what you're saying is like, when things are too comfortable, or they begin to sort of like tap into different emotions, you can just kind of like flatline. And then when things hard actually hit you, that's when you're like, oh crap. Like I'm talking about real life here. When actual things hit you in real life, you don't know how to navigate that. When, say, you're married and you have a kid, and then things get hard because it's hard being a parent, you don't know how to navigate all of these emotions. And that's where like sport and helping these kids can be huge.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like when you're talking about helping a kid regulate their emotions, that's so important. I think that, you know, you're talking about it is emotionally charged. You know, you watch, I don't know what it's like in hockey. It's been it is emotionally charged in hockey.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I remember playing.
You were furious.
Yeah, like I was unhinged a lot of the time.
Wow.
But like,
yeah, you led in penalty minutes and scoring.
I think yeah, one year I had and the next year my coach told me to, you know, dial back the emotions, and I was terrible. Like I couldn't. But there's some players, I mean, you can look at like professionally in any sport, there's some players that have to play on this line, like right up to the edge of having an emotional breakdown every time they're on the court or the ice. But once you learn how to harness that and control it, right? So I think it's like, when you get to be an adult and you start to have more responsibility, your ability to govern your temperament is so important, because there's stuff that happens when like in life, and then especially when you have kids, that can be extremely triggering, like you being super tired, having your kid not sleep, and then having to get up and do it again the next day, and then have your kid have a meltdown, or like even now, where I have like two kids, one's 10 and the other one's 12, and it's like there's stuff that we navigate every single day that's complex and that I have no roadmap for. So I'm like, okay, I think this is what we need to do in this situation. My kid doesn't want to do his homework, so okay, what are we going to do here? How are we going to approach this? I could freak out at him and scream and yell, if I can't govern my temperament, or I can take a step back and like, let's approach this, gather my emotions. It is frustrating. It's frustrating when you ask somebody to do something 14 times and they just look at you and they either, ignore you or just run to the basement and watch TV or whatever it is. But like, emotional regulation is a huge thing. Like, and then the ability to also not suppress your emotions, but allow yourself to feel your emotions. And that's one thing that, there's a lot of teachers who do that well. I think honestly, the guy who does that the best today, at least in, as far as I know, is again, Jason Wilson. He has a book called Battle Cry, and he's got another one called Cry Like a Man. But it's all about like, hey, it's okay to experience the 64 colors, right? The spectrum of all the emotions.
I think it was last year the Florida Panthers won the Stanley Cup in hockey, and they were interviewing one of the players in the end, and they're like, yeah, when you watch us, you think we're like emotional and sometimes out of control when we're on the ice. He's like, we're not. We're all actually extremely calm, but we know how to use those emotions in that moment to make us better. But you know how to regulate, you know how to go back to kind of center, to stay on lane, so you're not just being like completely pulled one way by rage and then losing it and starting a line brawl, right? which happens. But it's just, that's one of the coolest things. Like I had a kid, and he's had a few tough years. He turns 11 this year, where I could see his body language change when he was out on the ice. And the moment that the body language changed, he would play poorly the rest of the game. And so I was kind of telling the coaches about this. And then the next game, it was over tournament weekend, we noticed this body language happen as soon as we were maybe down 2 goals or something. And then we just pulled him off. We sat him an extra shift, and 3 coaches talked to him about how to navigate through that. And then he heard us, he took it in, and none of these coaches were his own father, which is also something that's important, which just shows the power of a coach. And he went back out there, and he played an amazing game. He might have gotten a goal and assist, I can't remember. But then I remember later that night in the hotel, I was with him in the elevator and just told him how proud I was of him for, kind of powering through that. And that was in the beginning of the season. And then 5 months went by, and he never went back to that place for the entire season, because we helped him defeat it. And we, treated him as a coach should treat a kid. And it's just like seeing those little wins for something that, might seem so small, but like that's gonna teach this kid so much in life. So that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're being a father figure in that moment. Like, I mean, there's a bunch of statistics that show that, obviously, like, kids who grow up without fathers in their lives, quality of life metrics are much worse. So like your earning power or your socioeconomic status, all those things suffer. But then kids who don't have a father in the home but have a good community around them, so maybe they play sports and they have a good coach, or they've got, they go to school and they have a male teacher who's really good to them. Those kids don't have there's no aberration between them and a kid who has a father in the home. So the point is that like there's a huge impact as a coach that you can have. And I think even, for like you said, that kid, for the example that you shared, the story about this kid who was emotionally unregulated and how you helped him kind of learn how to regulate his emotions. A kid is a dad. So it's the 3 of you guys coming in and kind of being that role in his life. Sometimes the dad is too close. And so it's like the kid can kind of tune his dad's voice out, which is something I'm learning for sure. Like, don't talk. I like to talk. So like, don't talk to your kids so much. Like, we have these, we drive to games and it's just the 2 of us in the car, and I'm like kind of bored. So I'm like, let's talk, man. And then I'll just talk to him for sometimes 20 minutes at a time, just talking about stuff. And he's just sitting there, not really saying anything. But it's easy for your own kids to tune out your voice. So I think having the extra, the additional voices, male voices in their lives. And even when we talk about these rites of passage or these initiation rites, what would happen was sometimes the father would be involved, but oftentimes if the father was involved, the father wouldn't be leading the experience. It would be some of the elders in the community, or like an uncle or a grandfather, somebody else. And you see that with even the boys that I coach. So I have 2 assistant coaches where their sons are on the team as well. And so we kind of have this, we've spoken about it, but we have this agreement where it's like, hey, we actually take special interest in each other's kids, because we know that because we're coaches, our kids, it's easier for them to get dysregulated because dad's here. So they're a little more comfortable. Like for one of the things we do is we say, if you show bad body language on the court, like you're going to come off and you're going to have to sit on the bench a little bit. And so for the boys whose dads are coaches, it's easier for them to go to the place where they're experiencing that, like showing their emotions, right? Because dad's here and it's a safe place and all that. And we want it to be a safe place, but we don't want it to be a comfortable place. And so I think sometimes when you're coaching your own kid, it can be a little bit too comfortable, and just a little bit too familiar. So I think, having those voices, and just like when you said that you went to the kid and you told him that you were proud of him, like, that's amazing. Like a kid to be able to hear that from somebody they admire. That's one thing that I try and do with the players that I coach, is like, I'll go up to them after a game or during a practice and just encourage them, and consistently, telling all the boys that I'm proud of them and that I see how they're working, and the validation and the confidence that gives them is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like, that's one of the huge things too, is because you don't know what happens at home with these kids. And like, from my experience talking to these kids' dads, like their dads deeply care, but in the end, you don't really know what goes on at home, and you don't know how often they're hearing language like this from another male figure in their life. And even if their dad says, "I'm proud of you" all the time, when somebody else says it, I think like the impact of that is so significant for these kids. And you mentioned something about how you want to be a safe place, obviously, so these kids can, come to the coaches about whatever they feel. But then you said you don't want it to be a comfortable place. Obviously, it's sport and everything. Can you just like elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you take the analogy of like lifting weights or going to the gym, like you can't go to the gym and be comfortable. Like you won't do anything. Like you might walk on the treadmill if you want to be comfortable. You have to make yourself uncomfortable in order to grow. So there has to be there's pain involved in growth. And so I think as a coach, it's like you're facilitating the discomfort or the pain. So our team this year, we've lost like, I think 5 games all year. So we've played, about 30 games. We've only lost 5 games, and we're winning games. This past weekend, we played 4 games, and we probably won, probably at 100 plus 100 point differential. So we outscored our opponents by 100. So as a coach, I'm like, I don't really like that. Like I feel like I have to keep my intensity and my urgency so high while I'm coaching them, because I'm like, you guys are up by 40 and you're starting to develop bad habits. Like you're not sprinting back on defense in transition, and you're kind of coasting because naturally it's too comfortable. So we're going into a tournament this weekend where we are like, we intentionally slotted our team up a level, and we know some of the teams we're playing, and we know it's very likely we're going to play 4 games. It's very likely we lose at least half those games, maybe 3, maybe all 4 of those games. But we're like, we know we keep them in a place of discomfort when we practice, and even in the games. Like there's things I'll do, like if we're winning by 20 plus points, then I start to be like, okay, if anybody misses a defensive assignment, the whole 5 guys come off. I put five more guys on. If you guys don't talk on defense, all 5 guys come off, 5 more guys go on. So I'm like creating this accountability within the game, even though I wouldn't do that in a close game because the personnel is super important then. But yeah, so I think it's just like, ensuring that there's this constant state of discomfort. And then what happens is, if you're in that state of discomfort, like, if you're going to the gym 3-4 times a week and you're lifting weights and you wake up the next morning and you're sore, if you do that for 3 months, after that 3-month period, you're going to look in the mirror and be like, man, like my body is completely changed. So you keep yourself in that state of discomfort for a prolonged period of time. And then you start to crave it. You start to actually crave the feeling. You start to crave like the exercise and the workout because of what it does neurologically. And so it's the same thing with when we're running practices with these, they're 12 years old now. So like, there is a high, like we're getting into more and more and more accountability as they get older. But like practices are hard. They're really hard. They have to be hard. And then there's this whole thing where you like some kids, there's a breaking point, like where the discomfort, and this happens like it'll happen in a game if you're down by, whatever, in hockey, a few goals, in basketball, 20, 30 points. There's like a breaking point where the discomfort, it's not even physical, it's emotional, gets to be like too much. And then it's like, and then it's we've had it in practices. We've got, 2 kids that are pretty big. One of them's, 12 years old. So he's pushing 6 feet probably. And the other one is a little like an inch or two shorter, but very strong. And they just battle each other. They battle each other in the post all practice. And we've had it where one of them is just like in tears because of how frustrated he is. And it's a perfect opportunity to go and like, let's explore what's, so this happened, and we, so we bring them in, we give them a little speech, a little talk, and then we send them to get water, and I'll go over to the kid who's crying and I'll just explore like, hey, what's going on? And he'll tell me some stuff, and I'll just encourage him, and I'll make sure that he knows it's okay to feel what he's feeling. It's normal. It's frustrating. I see, like I validate his feeling, his emotions, because I've seen it. Yeah. Like you got shoved in the back, and then you shoved him back, and then he felt what it was is he felt ashamed that he couldn't regulate his emotions, right? Because they're battling for a rebound, and he gets kind of like, we don't call fouls unless it's very egregious. We're not going to call fouls because we want them to learn like how to play through stuff. And a lot of times the officiating is like at youth sports is not very good. So like chances are the refs aren't going to call it anyway. So, but like he was ashamed that he couldn't regulate his emotions. And so I just said like, hey, it's normal. Like you haven't experienced this level of intensity before. So it's normal to like, you don't know how to handle it. Like it's physical, it's intense. The coaches are yelling from the sidelines, and it can feel like chaos. It's all right to feel these things. It's all right. Like, you're going to learn how to deal with this as you get older and older. And so, yeah, I think one of the things is like with that point about discomfort, it's like, so when you do that, you're going to create breaking points, and it's not, the intention is not to like break them. The intention is to push them to a point of where they experience emotional dysregulation so that they can learn to handle their emotions better. Because you were talking about like the flatlining. Like we don't want flatlining. Like we want you to experience your emotions. We're using sports to draw all these different emotions out of you. And then, hey, you're here with men who are emotionally regulated and who can help you emotionally regulate. And that's a huge thing. So
yeah. And it's so interesting because what will happen is comfort will be the beginning of all sorts of problems in life. So like, that's why you see, like, I know like quite a few people my age who like maybe aren't married, don't have any serious relationships, don't have any kids, or they are married and they have kids, and any moment they get, they seek comfort because they're so uncomfortable when they're not in it, and they do not like that feeling. So they go to their video games or whatever crutch they've set in place to help them feel like they're sitting in their lazy boy, all comfortable. And like that's such a big thing. And it's like, that's why sports are so good. And we've said this a whole bunch, but the TruCoach stuff is like, sports are there to simulate all of the challenges of life, and life is going to throw a lot of discomfort at you. So if you can take those opportunities like these kids are discovering, and then you can help them, hey, this is the emotion you're feeling. let's talk about it. I'm going to teach you to regulate it. And then the kids learn to communicate, which is another huge thing that men are just really bad at. And for men to understand what other men or boys are going through, like for you to be able to see that, oh, he was ashamed because he couldn't regulate. Like that's huge for him to be able to communicate it, but also for you to be able to recognize that so that you can help him navigate it.
Yeah. I think one of the things you said was just when you're talking about like too much comfort and how you know people who are, they're whatever in their 30s, right? Like mid 30s. And they're like, it just, numbing themselves out with entertainment or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think that's a symptom. Like it's symptomatic of, there's this term like motivational poverty. So I think there's a lot of men who experience this like motivational poverty. Like I don't feel like I can do anything worthwhile with my life, or I don't feel like I can do anything meaningful. Like men need purpose. They need to feel like they're contributing towards something that's more than just themselves. And so when, if you live in a world where it's like, so you haven't like hit those markers. So like, maybe your dad, when your dad was like 22, your dad got married. And by the time your dad was 25, he had you, or he had one of your siblings. And, he had a good paying job at 30 and all these things. And you're like in your mid 30s and you're like, I have none of those things. Like I don't have. And so it's like, if you actually confront that feeling of like, because it's a feeling of failure, like a feeling of, oh, I don't measure up. And so it's this deep, like spiritual soul wound that opens up. And then it's like, I actually can't feel that. I actually can't feel that on a consistent basis. Like if I do, I might not be around for much longer, like, and so it's like, I have to get out of this. I have to escape this feeling of discomfort, which is the world is filled with opportunities to escape, right? Like, and entertainment, video games are just one of those things. And it's an easy thing because it's so accessible. But yeah, that's kind of what we're trying to help boys avoid is, hey, if I can learn how to deal with discomfort, if I can learn how to want something badly and then achieve what I want, like set goals for your team, set goals for your players. There's one kid that I coach who I've been coaching him for 2 years, and like he's always had like kind of that pit bull mentality. Like he's the smallest kid on the team, but like he would come off the court with, bloody nose, chipped tooth, dislocated thumb. And he doesn't even know. He has no idea that these things are happening because he's just so engaged in the game. And, he comes, like his thumb, he goes to his dad's, one of our assistant coaches, and like, pull his thumb back into place for him. Okay. It's good. But like this kid has improved so like, it's insane how much he's improved. And so I'll tell him like, hey, you remember when you couldn't do that? Remember when you couldn't shoot a 3-pointer? You couldn't even like hardly hit the basket. Remember when you were learning how to, drive the ball through the paint, and now you're doing that. You're sucking the defense in and you're dishing the ball out. Like you're doing all these things that are like, you've improved. So you're teaching them all this discomfort is produced this result, and it's something that you really wanted. So if you apply that like later on in life, like, hey, I want this thing. I want to have a family. Okay. So if I want to have a family, I have to know how to make enough money to provide for them. So I've already accomplished all this stuff. I've already learned how to be in a place of discomfort, and through that discomfort, achieve things and accomplish things. And so if I can do all that other stuff I've already done, then I can do that too. And so I think it's just a way of like using that, like you said, sports imitating life, like using it as a way to help build. It's like the building blocks of your character, the building blocks of like your interior world, like your heart, your mind. It's like building the foundation of that. And so I think if we can play a role in that, like there's others who are gonna, their parents are gonna do it, you know, their teachers are gonna do it, other people in their lives, their extended families are gonna do that too. But as coaches, if we can play a small role in helping it establish those, you know, a good foundation that will set them up for success, I think we kind of have to do that.
Yeah. And, you know, you look at youth sports, and it's such a small percentage come out and that they're actually professionals in the end of it. I don't know what the numbers are, but it's probably like 1%, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many levels of playing. You know, if it's hockey, you have your local league or your house league, and then you have your rep, and then your AAA, and then, you know, there's different leagues that happen in between all that. Yeah. And I just think like being able to teach these kids so much more than just the sport, at the same time teaching them this sport, because it's very likely that, you know, hockey, basketball, soccer, whatever it is, will be a part of their lives for a very long time, whether they're playing just like the worst beer league hockey, but it doesn't matter because they're out there just having so much fun. But the biggest thing is they learn so many life things that when they come out. And the one thing that, you know, when I was coaching both the 9-year-olds and the 11-year-olds this year, I was able to assistant coach the 11-year-olds and head coach the 9-year-olds. One thing that all of the coaches aligned ourselves on was like, from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, the most important thing is that they come out a better person in the end. And then through that, they also happen to become a much better hockey player, a much better teammate, a much better brother or sister, or even son or daughter. And the parents who aren't on the bench get to step back and just sort of watch that happen. And one of the coolest things is like, I'll talk about some of these things with some of the parents, and like they are completely on board with it, and they completely get it too, because they understand the importance of it, right? Because they too are probably looking out and seeing how maybe they didn't have the right role models growing up, or they're like, oh man, maybe I'm the one going and playing video games every night all of the time. Like, no, like this is actually important to me. Like, because most fathers understand how big of a deal it is, but it can just be, can be difficult for them to navigate, or they don't know how to do it, or they feel like they're too alone doing it all by themselves. So yeah, it's just a wild opportunity to be able to help kids through all the years that they're in these sports.
Yeah, for sure. I think when you talked about the parents too, that's parents are always on board with that stuff. Like if you're paying whatever it is, whatever the fee is for your league, it's not going to be cheap, right? Like youth sports are not cheap.
And the time investment.
Yeah. So you're investing a ton of limited resources, time and money in something, right? So it's like, if all I'm doing is my kids, what are getting better at the sport, that's okay, that's fine. But in the end, they're not going to become a professional or make a living off of this. At least it's very unlikely they are. And so what are they getting out of it? Like what's the investment? What's the, for lack of a better term, the return on investment that we get out of these tens of thousands of dollars we're going to spend over the course of this kid's life? And there's other ways to do that. It's not like sports are the only way, but I think sports are a really fun way, because like the kids that I coach, they don't want to miss a practice, right? These kids, like we have to sit them because they're injured, and they won't. Like this kid had last night he hurt his toe really badly, his big toe, and he's trying to play through it. And we've got like 5 games this upcoming week, and we're like, you got to sit down. He's like, he just wants to play, he wants to have fun. And so we get to use this this container of something they love to introduce all these lessons. And you just like, there's not a lot of places you can do that. Most boys at school are like kind of checked out. they're kind of bored,
Yeah.
just sitting there. So it's harder to do that at school because they're bored. You can do it with a sport because they're having fun, and it just is like there's a guy I talked to maybe a year and a half ago about all this stuff, and he was like, the best intervention is for them not to know that you're intervening.
Yeah, you sneak it. You're sneaky about it.
So they don't even know what we're like. I'll communicate some things with them, and I'll be more intentional in my communication, explaining why we're doing what we're doing and stuff. But like when it comes, they don't really know what's going on. They just know that coaches seem to care. The parents are on board, and they're having fun, and they're growing, and they're getting better, and they've got good teammates, and but the end result of that, what that's going to produce over, you think about if a kid plays from, whatever, 10 to 18, if they play 8 years, or if they go on in college, they play till they're 23. So they're going to play, anywhere between like 7, 8 to 12 years of organized sport. If they're getting all that stuff every year, if I think about just in this year alone, the kind of things that the boys that I coach have learned just in this year alone, like multiply that by 10 or 12, and then start getting them ready. Like I'm excited for when they get to be 17, hopefully I'm still coaching by them, and just like, there's a lot more that you can start to hit on because life is going to come at them quickly. And so, there's a lot more that I think you can do, but like, I think it's just, it just makes sense. It is, you talk about like, we have this crisis of masculinity. We've got millions, tens of millions of boys playing organized sports all over North America. We actually have this opportunity to intervene when they're young. So it's preventative. It's an upstream approach where you're not getting to the point where you're 25, 26, 27 years old and you're like, man, I don't know what happened. I don't know. I'm just not prepared for life. Like I'm not ready for life. I think if we can get in at a younger age and start introducing some of these interventions, these rites of passage, these initiation rites, and then stick with them through their adolescent and teenage years, man, I think that the value that adds to any society is huge.
Yeah, and one big thing is I've heard a lot of people who are one of the generations older than mine, talking about how they've obviously watched multiple generations grow up after them, and they've seen that kids are going through things way earlier just because of the way our society is being ran by social media. They're seeing things way earlier. They have to navigate these things at the age of 10 as opposed to the age of 15 or 16 now, which is like, that's why it's so crucial to get in now before all of these things happen. And like, yeah, that's huge. Like the amount that a good intentional coach, the amount of growth that a coach like that can see within a year, like it's unreal. Like it just like, you just become amazed at just like obviously the growth of the sport, and your team does begin to win more because you are brothers and sisters on that team. And everybody knows that. And it's just like, yeah, it's absolutely incredible. But then multiply that by all the years that they're in these sports, and also understanding like, hey, each year you can change, you can add a little more pressure onto these kids. It's kind of like one thing we teach with our actually both 9-year-olds and the 11-year-olds is there's no full-blown contact in hockey yet. But the one thing that we want them to do is like let the other player know that you are there. So you are skating hard at them. You are stopping hard. So you're covering them in snow that you're creating when you stop. And then like they know you're there because your shoulder is against them. And once your shoulder is against them, you begin to push into them because you can't fly into them. Otherwise, it's going to be body checking. But once you're against them, you push. And that's kind of what being a coach is. It's like with 9-year-olds, like the kids know you're there and you're pushing them, but you're not pushing too hard because they're 9. They're little kids and they're there just to have a ton of fun. And you're just doing everything to make it a good, memorable, fun season. But as they're, 13, 14, 17 years old, they know you're there and you're pushing a little bit harder each year. And even as a father, it's just like that. Like, and we've said this to our kids, like, hey, you're a little bit older this year, which means I'm going to push you a little bit harder. But I never let off. I've always been pushing, but I'm just going to take another step to push you a bit more. And they know that. And it's like, it's a reminder for them that you're going to be continuing to push them and making them just a better person altogether.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good analogy too. Yeah, like they know you're there, but you're not pushing too hard. Yeah, there's always that line, right? Because you see coaches, like especially at the professional level, you're like, that guy crossed the line. Like he's freaking out, screaming, jumping up and down, throwing chairs. Like
you look like a monkey. Yeah, going nuts.
Like it's like, yeah, it's interesting because there's like, as a coach, it's like you can't, like, I can prepare my players, but I can't go out there and I can't compete with them.
No.
So it's just this past weekend, we were playing these teams that we just outmatched them. We were more athletic, bigger, stronger, quicker, more skilled. And so we're beating them. But I'm like, I didn't like some of our effort. And I'm like, it was like the third quarter and we played 2.5 quarters where our effort just wasn't there. And so I pulled the group off and I went and talked to them and I could feel myself like I have to get their urgency up. They're just not, because they're winning this game by whatever 15 points and they're not even playing well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of like, I raised my voice and I like clapped a bunch and I was like, I need you to pay attention here. We're developing bad habits. And I didn't say it that calmly. I said it like, and from that point on, it was a totally different game. So there are times, when you've got to escalate the level of emotional urgency.
Coaching kids through organized sports, it's such an opportunity for fathers to help guide their boys to becoming men. And this is the conversation that we want to continue. And there's so many pieces to this that we're going to continue to discuss. So keep your eye out for a whole lot more of these coming your way.